Hello and welcome to Console Shock Retro and Modern Gaming Chat with me, Trev, and as always, Stu. How's it going, Stu?
Yeah, good, Trev. What do you mean, as always? I wasn't on the last one.
That's a very good point, actually. That's probably, but basically, we haven't recorded for a little while, me and you, personally.
Yes.
Because you were away. What were you up to at Christmas time? You went off?
I was off exploring Asia.
Yeah, who's she?
Asia.
Oh, you mean the actual place?
The place.
Place.
Yes. The place.
Well, I wasn't. I was still here. Well, I wasn't really exploring Woolwich, really. I've kind of done that. But, yeah, me and Al obviously did an episode. So in terms of me and you, it's been November, I suppose. The end of November, I think, was the last one we probably did.
I think it might have been, yeah. So it's good to get back on it, back in the swing of things, and I think I've made a what's it called, a New Year's resolution for this podcast to still be as sporadic and irregular as we've always been.
I think we might struggle to keep that up, you know.
I think that's a low target.
We'll give it a go. Fairly low bar,
isn't it? We'll give it a go. Yeah. Exactly.
So, Christmas has happened, and people being away and coming back. So we couldn't really get one sort of quick in right as soon as we hit 2025. But that's okay, because in some ways it's probably helped, because it's been a week or two now of January, and things are kind of getting back in the swing. And there's basically some rumors floating around about various stuff, and there's various things have developed in the world of handheld PC gaming and general handheld gaming and stuff we've personally been up to on our own systems and consoles we muck around with at home. So what I'll start off with, not necessarily any of that news or rumors stuff, but I did mention it before we started recording, and you were straight away like, what the hell is that? So now's a good time to talk about it, I guess, as to lead us into everything. But I've got a Legion Go. I've mentioned it a bunch of times on the show. I've had it for a while now. It's a handheld gaming PC for people that forgotten or don't actually want listening to them for the first time. And it's just like a Steam Deck, except it's got a much larger screen. It's a bit like a Switch in the sense it's got like controllers that you can clip off the screen, like Joy-Cons, which is kind of cool. But I tend to just use it in its handheld mode. And usually it has Windows as like the operating system that it uses. So you kind of, to play games on it, you would basically install them into Windows as you would on a desktop PC. Obviously, Stu, you do that all the time on your own gaming PC. We're all used to that process. But the big thing with that is not a great experience using Windows on a handheld. On a gaming laptop, on a desktop PC, you've obviously got the perfect sort of keyboard and mouse or trackpad set up for that. Sometimes even a trackpad can be a bit clunky with using, especially Windows laptops. But on a handheld, often you haven't got a trackpad. Sometimes you have. Actually, the Legion Go does have one. In terms of the Windows handhelds, most of the time they don't. So you're using like a joystick, one of the joysticks, to actually emulate a mouse to sort of move the cursor around.
That sounds awful.
Exactly, in a very sketchy and clunky way that doesn't feel good at all. So there's just the actual, dealing with the navigating the interface, and maybe using like L2 or R2 to be the mouse click or something slightly obnoxious like that. That on its own is already pretty annoying. But then there's just Windows and just dealing with Windows when you're really only using it for games. I mean, when it's a daily driver and you're just browsing the web with it, writing your documents, perhaps working on it, then it's kind of it works for what its purpose is. But yeah, when you just want to fire it up and play a game, even on a desktop, and Stu, you can kind of feed back on that a little bit. Even that could be a bit clunky, especially when we kind of. I wouldn't say either of us were 100% consoles throughout our whole lives. I think we had Amigas, we had sort of jump between those and consoles throughout our childhoods. Probably had PCs as well. So we're always used to dealing with computers for games. Although, probably back in the day, the Amiga was probably easier for games than sometimes a modern PC can be, right? I mean, you would take a floppy disk and put it in, and you wouldn't have to boot to an interface. It would just load up the game straight away, wouldn't it, Stu?
No, exactly. Yeah.
So you've got to deal with that. And then there's, with Windows, there's updates. Perhaps you want to fire up your game, but Windows wants you to update these critical security stuff, and you've got to wait for it to download those and do that. It loads up all the different background processes, like Teams starts up and OneDrive, and they all nag you to do this and do that and get this. The built-in weather app pops up when you're in the middle of a game to tell you, it's going to snow in 10 minutes. You've got all of this general purpose computer stuff trying to get your attention. And you can kind of, mitigate that to a degree. There's game mode, which has been around for a little bit on Windows, which supposedly sort of stops any background processes that aren't related to your game and stops any notifications. But that isn't going to stop you, when you land on your desktop, it telling you need to do an update, which you might have to do, and it won't let you do anything else. Not to mention the launchers that various games have. There might not just be Steam. It might be, EA, the EA Play app. It might be Uplay, Ubisoft Connect, I think actually it's called now. Rockstar Launcher. You've got to deal with those. They might need to be updated before you can, bounce into your game. So this is all of that you've got to deal with using your mouse, using your joystick as the mouse. So yeah, it's a pain. Whereas the Steam Deck, it completely gets rid of all of those issues. SteamOS, it doesn't use Windows, it uses SteamOS. And then there's something called Proton, which is some genius software that runs in the background that lets Windows games run in SteamOS seamlessly. Well, there are some minor issues with some games, but most of the time it's seamless and it's perfect. But it's an OS that's been optimized for gaming on a handheld or with a controller. So things like updates are handled just in the same way they are on a PS4 and an Xbox. You basically, you navigate with the joystick and your buttons, and you just select the game from a big library of games like you've got on the Switch or any other console, and it just loads it up. If there's updates, it handles those in the background. You don't need to use a trackpad at all. Obviously, if there are games that do use a mouse and a keyboard, there are ways to adapt to those with the way that Steam can emulate mouse actions with the controller. There are trackpads on the Steam Deck as well, which are really good. So you can use those. You can go into a desktop if you want to. You can boot out of the game mode and then don't go into a desktop. But for the most part, when it's in your hand, you're using the game mode, and it's perfect. It's so easy to use. Now, there's you've obviously experienced. You've got the Steam Deck, you've got a desktop. I mean, how do you feel the differences are? How you use them? Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, I actually prefer the desktop a lot more than the Steam Deck. And I do like the Steam Deck, but you've got to almost pick and choose the games that you play, I think, on the Steam Deck. And it's great for, we talked about sort of football games on there. We've talked about, sort of I call it action adventure games. And I say you couldn't really play, competitive online games because you wouldn't be quite, precise enough with the controls. I don't think you can play mouse and keyboard games because I haven't got the hang of the sort of the touchpads yet. So I do prefer playing with, on the PC. I almost get frustrated when I have to use a controller on the PC. So I'm a little bit of the opposite, but I 100% get your point about, there's nothing more sort of frustrating when, you come home, you turn on your PC, you've had a stressful day, and you think, okay, I want to play some Call of Duty, I want to play this. And then there's, an 12 gigabyte download that you've got to do. And you're like, well, all right, and I won't be playing this now, then will I? And you'll be playing this in a couple of hours, or something happens. You might get a little virus on your computer, and that's a really sort of frustrating thing. And then going back to the launchers, they always seem to be constantly loading in and forgetting what my passwords are. And then
oh god, and I'm like,
EA does that. What's the one for? and I think I installed. I had like a funny moment where I was like, no, I still Far Cry 5 on Game Pass, but then it's not there. Why is it not there? So I went into settings or things like that, but it wasn't loading in to Ubisoft's launcher, which has to be
Ubisoft
on
Connect.
Yeah. So then I clicked on it and I said connect. I pressed the connect button and then it connected and then it was there. And well, why isn't it just automatically connect? And
why doesn't it just being like Game Pass's own interface, sort of thrown over there? Yeah,
exactly. And I, so even if I were to turn on Game Pass now, I bet that game wouldn't be there, and I have to do a separate action. This is a real first world problem, isn't it? A first world problem.
Yeah, it's tedious, though. It's very tedious.
It's tedious, and there's more things in the world to worry about. But I'm saying that could be better.
Compared to a console where you just turn it on. In some cases, you've got like quick resume, haven't you? I think on like the PS5 and the Xbox Series, where perhaps it's the game that you've been playing recently, you can just dive straight in, and it'll be literally at the point you left it. You haven't got to go back to the title screen. Much like gaming handhelds really pioneered that, really, didn't it? With the PSP and the and later on, even the Steam Deck does a quick resume as well, which is great, especially when it's something that isn't something that's really you could do at all on a gaming PC that's Windows based. So yeah, look, as you just said, it can be a very frustrating thing. So you've got that to deal with on the Legion Go, and it's kind of exacerbated by the fact that you're using it on a handheld. But there's this operating system that you can install called Bazzite, which is basically SteamOS, but it's not just restricted to the Steam Deck. You can download Bazzite. Someone's basically taken a Linux distribution and kind of bolted on all the SteamOS stuff onto it to create a sort of a almost like they've done a remake of SteamOS. But this SteamOS you can install on anything. It is optimized for certain handhelds. There are extra little trinkets and cool like add-ons that come built in. You can tell it what handheld you're putting it on. So you can tell it you're putting it on a Roggally or a Legion Go, and it'll optimize the install for one of those handhelds. But you could put it on anything, put it on a desktop, which is very cool. But it's literally SteamOS for a non-Steam Deck handhelds. So obviously being frustrated with the Legion Go because of the way you have to deal with Windows, I was like, well, you know what? What if I try and bung Bazzite on it and kind of turn it into just a sort of a super Steam Deck or a Steam Deck Pro, because the Legion Go has a bit more grunt behind it. The main thing that it really has an advantage of is you can obviously dial up the power draw and the power settings, the TDP. You're kind of stuck at 15 watts really with a Steam Deck. You can't go any higher than that. So there's kind of a ceiling you're going to hit. Particularly frustrating if there's a game that maybe just, you want to play it, but the frame rate isn't stable. It's maybe just hovering under 30 frames a second. And if only you could, had a few more watts, you could jack into the graphics system there. It might have stabilized the frame rate. Well, with the Legion Go, it can go up to 30 watts. So you've got double the amount of power. It doesn't necessarily mean double the graphical prowess. But it does mean you can just nudge it in. Some of those games will get nudged into being, nice, smooth frame rates, which you can't do on the Steam Deck. So that'd be kind of cool if I had SteamOS on the Legion Go, with a bit more grunt, basically. So I installed Bazzite.
Does this run instead of Windows, or does it run on top of Windows?
So there's two ways of doing it. Yeah, you can either completely wipe your console or your PC, sorry. And it'll be completely on it. It'll be totally Bazzite based. So it'll wipe off Windows, or you can set up a dual boot situation and have Windows running on one half of your hard drive, Bazzite on the other half. You can switch between them, like you can with when you put Linux on a PC. Generally, you can have Windows and Linux together or whatever. Or on a Mac, you used to be able to use Boot Camp and put Mac OS and Windows together on an Intel based Mac. So you can do that. I just got rid of Windows completely. The only thing that, I'm really losing with that, obviously people can just straight away say, well, you're going to lose a bunch of games that don't work in SteamOS, like games that use certain brands of anti-cheat is one, and a lot of, Game Pass, really. And that's true, but I found I don't really play a lot of games on Game Pass. It's the odd one or two, some of which I could just buy on, Steam or wherever if I really, really want to. But I found myself using the streaming version of xCloud, the streaming platform on Game Pass. I've been playing Dead Space Remake on that. I've got a pretty good internet connection at home, and it's pretty playable. At times, I forget I'm really streaming the game, and it isn't installed locally. That is a game you can run on the Steam Deck. You can buy it, and not through Game Pass. You can buy the game, and it runs okay on the Steam Deck. But you get sort of the Xbox Series version streamed to you. And actually, I'm playing that streaming to my Steam Deck. There is an app you can download for SteamOS called Greenlight, which allows you to access xCloud through its own separate app. And I use that on the Steam Deck and now the Legion Go with Bazzite. And you can I use that for Game Pass. And it's nice to be able to just dive straight into a game with xCloud, not to install it or do anything like that. It's not as good as Nvidia with their streaming service.
But that's coming, isn't it? That's coming to SteamOS soon.
Yes, they actually announced that, didn't they?
Yeah, CES in Las Vegas.
Yeah, so the GeForce Cloud streaming. I've never used it. Have you used GeForce Now? Isn't it?
GeForce Now. I haven't. I think it's meant to be the best of the streaming services.
Yeah,
but then I'm still of the opinion that I don't know. I never have any. Streaming games doesn't really sort of get me. I know, sort of too excited, and if I was away from, if I was on holiday or something like that, it sounds either I'll do gaming on my Switch or I'll take a bit of a break from gaming, or I'll sort of things like that. I haven't got sort of too excited about it, and I think I would. I've got a Steam Deck, and I would take that with me, and I'll play a game that was actually on there. I just feel that, cloud gaming. It probably is. It probably is good. And if you've got good internet, you probably can't notice too much of a difference with it. But I think overall, I'm not really excited about it, really.
Yeah, it's definitely not perfect, but the experience I've been able to get with xCloud has been good enough for me to be able to sort of dump using Game Pass, the old-fashioned way. GeForce Now, I've tried the free version, but the free version is pretty awful. I was trying to play a game a few weeks ago on the free version, but you have to go into a queue because you're at the bottom of the food chain.
Don't you get an hour?
You get an hour, but when I was trying to fire up a game, it put me in a queue and it said you have to wait 40 minutes before you can play your game. I was like, Jesus Christ. Obviously, they're trying to get you to pay for it, and I'm sure if you do that, it'll be as quick as getting in as it is. I mean, xCloud, you have to wait like 10, 20, 30 seconds to get into the game, but it's nothing egregious, really. But yeah, GeForce Now, it just wouldn't do it, and I'm not willing right now to pay for another service like that. Maybe I'll try a month of it or something if I get a free voucher and see if it's good enough. Cool thing about it is it can scan your Steam library and various other libraries on the various launchers and tell you what games you can just then play on GeForce Now, and it will kind of access your saves on those platforms, which is kind of cool. But yeah, for now with Game Pass. Yeah, obviously I'm sacrificing that to an extent, but I'm happy to do it, offline, streaming it. Not going to help me when I'm out and about with the Legion Go, but to be honest, it's going to be played most of the time at home, so that's not going to be too much of an issue. So there's that, but with Bazzite on it now, what I've done is it's just fully Bazzite. I'm not using Windows at all. And essentially, what I've got now is like like I said, Steam Deck Pro. I've been using it mostly recently for PS3 stuff, because the Steam Deck, it's not quite up to the level where a lot of PS3 games, apart from the very simple or the more less graphically intensive ones, those run quite well. But anything like Grand Theft Auto 5 or a lot of football games, weirdly enough, don't run well at all. Whereas those games all run fine on my League. Well, they did on using RPCS3 on Windows. They run really well on the Legion Go, and now Bazzite using the Linux version of RPCS3, they run great as well. So yeah, and you get all the, basically it's everything you can do with the Steam Deck you can do with the Legion Go, including the quick suspend and resume. You just press the power button on the top when you're midway through a game, go away, do whatever you want to do, come back, hit the power button again, you'll jump straight back where you are, just like you do on the Steam Deck.
What I was going to ask is, so let's say, I don't know, one game you're playing, before you did the change, so you're playing it through the Windows environment, and let's say you got 35 frames per second FPS, and then you changed to the Bazzite, and then did you get like 50 frames per second, or was there, because obviously I imagine that the Bazzite software is a lot less resource hungry than Windows with all the updates and garbage going on in the background. Do you actually see actually this runs much better?
Well, I haven't really used a lot of actual AAA games on it, but a lot of it, to be honest, I still do a lot of that on the Steam Deck. I'm sure I'll come up. There'll be a game at some point where it just doesn't run great on the Steam Deck, like, I don't know, Callisto Protocol, or well, maybe a game that I know runs okay. I might want to run a bit better on the Legion Go. I haven't personally had any points where I've needed to do that, but there's a great video. The Digital Foundry did a whole video on Bazzite. And they did a comparison between a game running under Bazzite on I think a ROG Ally is what they were using, versus the same game on the same device under Windows. And they found that sometimes you were getting a few more frames under Bazzite. Weirdly, there was also situations where you might get a few less, probably because the Proton translation layer isn't quite picking up all the slack that's missing from it not running on Windows. So there's a caveat there. So it can be, but not dramatically so, to the point where the game is suddenly unplayable. But on the other side, it's not a dramatic game that, a game that you might struggle to get 30 FPS is suddenly 60. There might be some examples out there, but it seemed like, I think generally they found they were getting a few more games on average, a few more frames on average. But I would recommend jump on Digital Foundry's YouTube and just search for Bazzite. You'll see the video. It's really good.
Just let everyone know it's not spelled with an S. It's spelled with two Z's. So it's Bazzite. And honestly, I'm not going in this and just leading Trevor into sort of questions where I know the answer. I've never heard of this before. I certainly would recommend yourself then, Stu, as well, to check out that video. But it's been really great. I'm really glad I've done it. I haven't missed Windows really at all. At the moment, so I'm mostly using it for PS3 emulation, which is very intensive. And the Legion Go has just enough. I mean, a good example is Wipeout HD or Wipeout HD Fury. It's a really great PS3 game. Running that on RPCS3 on the Steam Deck, it was a juddery mess. You'd get about 20 frames a second. This is a game that was 60 on the PS3. But on the Legion Go, I can sort of, nudge up the TDP a little bit, sort of 20 watts, which is past the 15. There's the max you can do on the Steam Deck. And it's 60 frames a second. It's completely buttery smooth on the Legion Go, on RPCS3, on Bazzite. So that's a good example of a game, where that extra grunt in the Legion Go is just allowing me to made a game that was unplayable. Okay, this is, again, we're talking about an emulator here. We're not talking about, just a normal native Windows game or PC game.
But it's a really good example of where that extra grunt combined with Bazzite has been really great for me. So yeah, if you're absolutely wedded to needing Game Pass native and you don't want to use xCloud and a bunch of games you have just don't work well in SteamOS, you probably will have no reason to drop Windows, and you're quite happy to deal with all the clunkiness. But yeah,
I think if I had a handheld which wasn't a Steam Deck, I wouldn't go from swapping my Steam Deck to Bazzite. I think that might be a little bit doesn't quite make sense. But then switching from if I had a Legion Go or a Rocket League, or at the CES I can't remember the name of it in fact, but it came out and it was like one of these
it was a Legion Go S. Yeah,
is that the massive one that look like
there's two?
Yeah,
we're kind of going into to sort of what some of the announcements that happened in the early part of the year CES. Yeah, like you say, but yeah, Lenovo have got a couple now. Obviously, I've got the original Legion Go that I've stuck Bazzite on, but they announced like the Legion Go 2, which is the massive it's even bigger than the current gen Legion Go. They've announced that, but I think that's just a straight Windows. It's just basically what the Legion Go was, but bigger with a bit more grunt. But the interesting one is the Legion Go S, which is smaller, more.
Is that the one with SteamOS on it? Steam Deck on it.
That's right. Yeah. That will ship with SteamOS. So we're seeing the SteamOS. I mean, I just mentioned Bazzite, which is basically like a version of SteamOS that anybody could download and bung on any PC, which is basically there to fill that void of, people were saying, I want to run SteamOS on something that isn't the Steam Deck because I've got other devices that I think it would go great with. So Bazzite has filled that void. But it seems now, obviously, there's this new Legion Go coming out. That will have SteamOS on it, which is cool because obviously it'll, like I sort of said, the purpose for Bazzite is, and putting it on a Legion Go for me is to kind of make like a Steam Deck Pro or a Super Steam Deck. And certainly when it comes to emulation, that's basically what it's done for me. It hasn't taken over from my Steam Deck. I still love my Steam Deck, and to be honest, it's got a better form factor. I think the big screen probably makes it a bit unwieldy to use for long periods of time. And to be honest, I'll be tempted to get this Legion Go S, which is more like Steam Deck size, but with SteamOS built in. That'll be great, and the extra power that'll be almost the semi-official Steam Deck Pro, isn't it? If it's actually going to be there, but it means that the SteamOS seems to be breaking out of just being on the Steam Deck now, and that's the first example.
Exactly, and I think Linus Tech Tips did a video of they made an AMD system, and they managed to get SteamOS onto that, and so I just think, and that there's all rumours that it's going to be coming out, so people can just install it on their desktop, their laptop, their portable device, all different sort of devices, and I think that's going to be a little bit of it's going to be a real sort of boost in the arm. Not that the SteamOS needed it, but that's going to be a real sort of boost in the arm. So all these other people are going to be going, actually, I just want to turn on my computer, and I've sort of openly talked about, actually, my desktop, I turn it on, I put a game on. That's all I do with it. Actually, all of the productivity stuff I do, as in emails and a little bit of, video editing and, managing documents and stuff, that's all done on my Mac. I never do any of that on my PC. So maybe having SteamOS on my PC, now I'd have to sort of go, actually, I do like Game Pass, and with a mouse and keyboard, managing all the intricacies of Windows and the clunkiness of it sometimes is actually quite simple, and I know what I'm doing, so I probably won't change. But I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that go, well, actually, I want a box under my TV that'll play all these super cheap Steam games. Perfect, that's what I want. Then there's I think it's gonna do a real. It'll be a disruptor of the PC market. That's my what's the word? That's my
I agree.
prediction.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, it's something that you've mentioned it fairly well there, but having experienced this was already the case when I had a Steam one, just using it on the Steam Deck, but now with Bazzite, potentially now, I think Bazzite will be affected if Valve just release SteamOS and say, just here you go, it's free, download it, stick it on whatever. I'd be tempted to get some kind of a decently powerful mini PC, which are fairly common these days, that can run current gen games, and you can get those that can sit under your TV, put maybe hopefully actual SteamOS on it, because it'll be supported at that point, or it'll just be Bazzite if it isn't, and be able to PC game, but on your TV, but with a controller. So you can just sit across from the TV, switch it on, bang, you're at your library, your Steam library. You might have got, you obviously, I've been through this, so I've got it set up on mine. You've got to fiddle around to get, your good old games library on there, and your Ubisoft Connect account on there, EA Play. But you can get around these, and you can have it working in the gaming mode, so you can make it as painless as possible.
Yeah, but you can have a little keyboard on a USB. Exactly. You can have that, to the side. So once you've all set these things up, then you can do it sort of via the controller. But the other point that you really sort of touched upon earlier was, going up to 20, was it TDP? Well, actually, if it's plugged in, well, surely it'll run at 200 TDP or whatever. Yeah. So, and then have a little
TDP
fan.
Will be irrelevant.
Exactly. So you'll actually go, I'm now getting, and I don't work for Digital Foundry. I don't fully understand that, but it seems like the more power, the better performance you're going to have, and
another thing that I really enjoy doing, is I like plugging the Steam Deck into the TV. It's fairly easy to jack it into the TV now, pretty much as easy as a switch. It'll pick up on the TV instantly. I've got a controller that I've got sync to it. I like going in RetroArch. I mean, there's other emulator solutions like EmuDeck, which I don't use. But with RetroArch, I've got all my ROMs and emulators in there. And with the Steam Deck connected to the TV, I can play my Saturn, PlayStation, Mega Drive, Super Nintendo Arcade, all through, without having to navigate to, with a mouse and a keyboard through the GUI and Windows to get to the apps and stuff. This is all accessible through the main interface and game mode on my Steam Deck. And it's, something that you'll never be able to do on a PS5. But you've kind of got the best of both worlds with, a SteamOS-based gaming PC. You can stick those emulate like PS3 games. You can run those. I can run like Ridge Racer 7 at like 4K, on a Bazzite with our PCS3 plugged into the TV. You can connect to DualShock 3 if you wanted. So you could recreate the PS3, but, a much higher resolution. And some games will even run at higher frame rates than they used to. So you've got that, you're covered even all the way up to that. And, at the end of the day, a lot of these Sony exclusive games, they might take a while, but a lot of them are coming out on PC now, Ratchet and Clank and Uncharted and Last of Us. So you're not really, there'll always be some exclusives, but that has been lessened a lot. And
what about, in a year's time that you're going to get, it will almost be, every because I think it's fair to say that most games that come out, or actually probably 50% of PC games come out, are not Steam, playable, SteamOS compatible or playable to a certain level. And some that are like, because they got the yellow sticker next to them, they say things like, small text, or, you might have to use the mouse, or, things like that. So, potentially with this SteamOS going out to a much bigger market, games like PC games in brackets will come out with, this is a PC game. This is, Windows compatible, tick, SteamOS compatible, tick. It will almost be, it will come out on day one. compatible with both sort of basically systems, really, and the SteamOS will become its own, sort of system. And I said this 3-4 years ago about all the Steam Deck clones that people have come out, and some of them have made them, let's go for a bigger screen, let's make it really powerful, let's make it really portable. They've tried all different things with them, and it's really pushed the sort of the market forward. And I think that they'll do the same with little Steam sort of computers where people go, actually I want SteamOS and I want to put a 5090 in it. I want to have SteamOS. I want to have a an AMD 98 X3D that chip, CPU, and I want to have 64 gigabytes of RAM. I want to have 1,000 watt power. Let's actually see what games are like. Once people are doing all these exciting things with it and going, actually I've got this build with SteamOS and I'm getting 500 frames a second, where the same build on Windows gets 350 because it's got to run all this garbage in the background. So it'd be great for people who are just dedicated gamers, and actually if they want to go backwards and go, actually I want to use SteamOS on a desk, and I want to use a mouse and a keyboard. Yeah, crack on. Use it like you would do a normal computer.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and there is obviously blind spots with SteamOS at the moment. The keys of the whole thing is Proton. Which is allowing Windows games to run under Linux, and then which is SteamOS. But obviously, it's amazing at the moment that a huge amount, I don't know what percentage it would work out as, but it seems like most modern games and most current gen games work under Proton straight away. There are blind spots like anything that has anti-cheat. Unfortunately, a lot of that's EA stuff like FIFA, the recent FC 25, 24. They don't work. I'm hoping that in the next few years there'll be a workaround for that, and they will get working.
But the whole point is, if let's say 15-20% of people are doing their PC gaming on SteamOS, and then EA goes, oh no, we have all this anti-cheat, we do all, well, we don't want you to play, then they're just cutting out the market completely for themselves. So there'll be something go, oh yeah, we've got, and you can have anti-cheat, but it works on SteamOS. And
I would like to think that will be solved in the next few years, hopefully sooner. And those games that do require that very specific Windows anti-cheat will be able to run on Linux. I mean, not long ago, with Windows games running on Linux was a pipe dream anyway, and obviously look where we are now. Tens of thousands of games are working, which is incredible. And to be honest, consoles have blind spots. I mean, you can't play Mario on a PlayStation. With a SteamOS based gaming PC, you're covering way more of a gamut of stuff than you ever could on a console.
Well, consoles are just completely, closed in ecosystems, and to get your game on there, you've got to go through what's it called? It's got to be approved. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. It's got to, be compatible with all these different things to get onto, Xbox or PlayStation. But you can still, if I let's say I made up a game tomorrow, I could upload it to a website and go, click here, download it, and install it. It doesn't even have to go through Steam. It doesn't have to go through GOG. It doesn't have to go through anything. It's a completely sort of open environment. And it seems like sometimes I want to say to its detriment, SteamOS is, anyone can put any old rubbish on there, and,
well, same on the Switch.
The Switch is, some of the stuff on there is garbage, but
exactly,
it makes trying to find the gems within it quite difficult. But the point is, once you find the gems in there, things like Vampire Survivors and what's that card game I'm playing all the time? Battagon, not Battagon. I forgot how to say it, but the card game that was nominated for Game of the Year and stuff. So there's just so many sort of options out there. So I think it's really quite exciting.
Yeah, it's something I might try. If get myself sort of a decently priced sort of gaming PC, I'd stick SteamOS on it. Get on my Steam, the games that I want to load up on there. Obviously, they'll be able to run like just as they would on any gaming PC. You're not restricted to it being in a handheld anymore, and have me emulators on there and everything else, but all in a nice way that makes it easy to manage from across the living room, which is the dream, really. For a gaming PC. So. But that's kind of, Bazzite and, just looks like SteamOS is going to be on more things now, which is a big thing that I think that's come out of, CES and the last couple of weeks. Something that's probably, well, from what I've read on Eurogamer, literally before we jumped on the call, in the next few days, is the Switch 2. So there was some interesting points about what the Switch 2 could look like, not literally what it could look like. We'll touch upon that probably as well, but in terms of power, and I think there was a little thing where people have gotten hold of some imagery of the actual motherboard, and they were kind of disappointed that they weren't. It wasn't like the sort of based upon what they saw on the chips and the size of them. It wasn't going to be something that could really compete with like a PS5. It was still in that kind of PS4 realm to a degree. So that looks like that might be what we're going to be getting. I don't think that's a bad thing because you'll be able to. It won't be literally a PS4. The technology will be modern technology, probably from a couple of years ago. In reality, much like the original Switch, its sort of chip, its Tegra, isn't it? Is what's in there was already a couple of years old when that came out. But it'll have modern RAM, modern bus speeds, modern interfaces between the chips, which will put it way beyond. In reality, what a PS4 could do. What are your thoughts on the sort of recent Switch stuff, Switch 2 stuff?
Yeah, I'm sort of quite excited about the Switch 2, and then I think I was I watched the Digital Foundry, and they were talking about it, and they were sort of saying it's going to be more similar to sort of a PS4, and expect to see loads of PS4 era sort of ports on there. And I thought, okay, that's quite good, but I think we've got to think of it from the point of view of it's only going to have a 720 screen or a 1080p screen, and
I'd keep it at 720.
Exactly, keep it at 720, and the sort of the big
720
issue.
720 looks great on a 7-inch or an 8-inch screen. It looks sharp, and you don't need to go any higher than that.
Exactly, and people, Nintendo fans aren't screaming for, actually, I want the latest chips. I want it to be PS5. I want it's got to be really beefy. It's got to be super cooled. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. Oh yeah, by the way, it's 700 quid. Oh no, that's too expensive. So actually, for it to be like almost like to jump up a generation in gaming, and then so it can come out at let's say it's probably going to be about £300.
I reckon it will be.
It's going to be around that figure, and if you make something to a price like that, unfortunately, you're not going to have, PS5 or Xbox Series S, type. But I don't think it needs it. I really don't, because, people want a longer battery life. People want to be able to, to see a great leap in sort of gaming, and they'll be able to get that. And then you've got to remember that, not that you've forgotten, but Nintendo games aren't always the most demanding. The type of games that people play on here aren't going to be, people aren't going to be going, oh, well, I've bought the new, Mario Sunshine 3. The ray tracing is absolutely awful. Where's the ray tracing? Nintendo, you suck. They're going to go, oh, actually, yeah, I'll play this game. Oh, it was so colourful. Oh, the controls were so innovative. I got lost in the world with it. That's what people want. And, Nintendo, I'm pleased they're not going down the route of, making a machine that's probably too expensive. And, when I was away in Asia, I walked past this video game shop, and the biggest thing in there everyone was looking at and playing on was the Switch, the original Switch. And they had a big thing on there. There's loads of people around it. And that's what people sort of want, young people today. Yeah. That's what they're looking for. And they're not going for, well, actually, I want a Steam Deck with this and that on. I want, they want something sort of simple. And I think that's what Nintendo will deliver.
Yeah, I think talking about like the power that it'll have, we've already touched upon. Also, the hardware is more modern, even if it's not, teraflop wise, might not be more than a PS4, but with modern RAM, modern system buses and interfaces, it'll be able to do things more efficiently and better than a PS4 from 2013 could. So I think it will probably sit in that. I mean, the original Switch was kind of sat between a sort of an Xbox 360 and a PS4. And, it was good enough that it could keep up with some of those later PS4 releases. Obviously, it got The Witcher and it got, Doom and like the later Mortal Kombats and Wolfenstein and, games that probably had no business being on something that would sit between a 360 and a PS4, but it was able to do them. And that was great. And I think we're all that was kind of amazing at the time. And that was kind of about the level, about as good as it would probably have gotten, I think. And it worked. People were happy with that. So I think if the Switch 2 could sit, personally, I think they probably could have done releasing this thing about a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago. It seems like we've been talking about a Switch 2 for 3 or 4 years. It's just a symptom of the fact that it's a successful device. Nintendo are very poor at following up a successful Nintendo thing with another one. Well, not so much for handhelds, but with the home consoles, their record is a bit up and down. Also they followed up the NES with the Super Nintendo pretty well, but then they got to the N64 and it kind of took a bit of a dive. Then they kind of got exacerbated by the GameCube. Then they had the Wii, which was an incredible success. But then straight after that, we had the Wii U, which was an absolute nosedive. So it's kind of, I think it's nearly impossible for this to fail, the Switch 2, without them really.
All they've got to do is it's got to come out. It's got to be compatible with the original Switch games.
Which we've heard it is.
Yeah, exactly. And it's got to have a bit more power. Everyone's going to be happy with it. I honestly can't see how it could really possibly sort of fail, because it's just going to be more of the same. Loads of people are going to go out and come bundled with the new Mario game, new Zelda game, something like that, and it will be an absolute success. But to go back to your point, it's like, do you remember that YouTuber? He doesn't do YouTube anymore, but Rich from Review Tech USA. I don't know if you remember him.
Who could you forget?
Yeah,
he torpedoed his own channel, but he was a thing.
He was a thing. Anyway, but the point is that he's been talking about the Switch 2, Switch Pro, things like that for the way he was talking. It's going to come out any time now. It's like, oh right, okay, any time now, and eventually, it will come out and. But I don't know why they didn't do it sooner. I think they should have done it sooner. But then I think the point is that the Switch, still sells extremely well. The games still sell extremely well. Why sort of rock the boat with it, really?
Yeah, it's that really. I think if it can sit between, in terms of graphical fidelity or power, whatever you want to call it, if it can be between a PS4 and a PS5, we've already heard that, although this was never confirmed, but this is back in 2023. Actually, this is how long we've been talking about the Switch 2. But apparently there was a demo where it was running The Matrix Awakens, which was a very impressive, very high fidelity, cutting edge graphics demo and gameplay demo that was on the Xbox Series and the PS5. I never played it, but obviously I watched the videos about it because obviously your digital foundries of this world, they went berserk over it because of the tech that it was in there. It was in so if the Switch can run that, it's probably going to be fine running multi-plat PS5 era games, obviously with some compromises. And you can get away with having a console that's not, exactly at that level of power, a handheld console that's just beneath that PS5 level, because the developers can optimize their games for it, which they can't necessarily do with like a PC. So you'll be able to get like more impossible ports, of huge games. I don't think you have Grand Theft Auto 6, but that's probably something of that fidelity they could probably squeeze onto the Switch 2, with some compromises like they did with Witcher 3 and Doom and all of those games. If it can do that, I would consider that to be a success. And we know that it's going to be backwards compatible, which is great. And that'll be interesting as well, because a lot of those games didn't run brilliant on the Switch. I mean, the recent Mortal Kombat was horrendous, but maybe now you could basically run that on the Switch too. I hope there's like a boost mode, like the PS4 Pro had with old PS4 games. The PS5 kind of has a boost mode, doesn't it?
That's a good point. That people can come out and patch these games so that they'll actually go, oh, this got a Switch 2 mode. Oh, brilliant! Oh,
exactly.
This is just as good as the the PS5 or whatever now. And then people get sort of genuinely excited. And then the point also to go back, there's so many Xbox One games, PS4 games that are just sitting there, ready to be converted. There could be a whole industry in that. You could get Grand Theft Auto 5 on a Nintendo console. And it's like, oh wow, now we're talking. That's going to be pretty cool. Yeah.
It'll be great to see. I mean, but I think they should have ported that to the Switch One. Really, I mean, they did Red Dead Redemption, so Grand Theft Auto 5 probably isn't actually that much of a stretch to get on the Switch, especially as it's already a 360 game. So don't know why they didn't really do that, but some of those games that don't run brilliant on the Switch, perhaps the Switch 2 will have that boost mode. So those games that have dynamic resolutions and unlocked frame rates or frame rates to the way it doesn't quite hit the either the 60 or the 30 that they're kind of which is what they're try and aim for on the Switch. The Switch 2 can actually boost those games so they'll hit those frame rates. And dynamic resolution, maybe they'll stay at the higher resolution throughout the whole game as opposed to jumping down to lower resolutions like it would do on a regular Switch. And then your digital library, because I've got a ton of digital games that I bought on the original Switch over the last 8 years. They'll just carry straight over. The Switch on online service, I don't think they're going to torpedo that and make a brand new one which is basically what they did, wasn't it, with the Nintendo Online? I think that will just carry over. I think hopefully they've got that nailed down now. And in terms of the form factor, I mean, the screen, we've already kind of touched upon that, but you can keep that at 720. 720 looks great, on a 7 or 8 inch screen. I think they're sort of saying it's going to be a little bit bigger. It's going to be closer to an 8 inch screen now, which would be fine, long as it's, I think the one thing is make it not as flat on like the back, like have actual kind of handles around the Joy-Cons. So your kind of palms are kind of resting on something a bit more than on the original Switch. That would be good. But I think having the same Joy-Con thing where you can snap them off, and when you connect to the TV, obviously you'll be able to get a boost in power. Maybe it can do serviceable sort of 4K. I think I've heard, there's been rumors of different upscaling technologies that it can use.
Yeah, they were saying that Nintendo have sort of patented some sort of AI upscaling sort of technology. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's, I mean, something that is well beyond my knowledge is all the controversy about, and I don't want to talk about this now, but the fake frames, all these new 5,000 graphics NVIDIA cards have just got fake frames. And I'm not, what you know, and it's some sort of like scandal.
Frame generation, using frame generation.
It's frame generation. So it hasn't got brute horsepower. It's actually, you know, creating these amazing performance by, you know, software basically. And then so that's something that, you know, I think will be really good on the Switch 2 to create a 4K output, and you know, so you still get your 30 frames a second or 60, whatever you're looking for, but it's generated by, you know, not my words, but fake frames. But you know,
the original Switch obviously relaunched at a slightly weird time, didn't it? Where the 4K TVs had kind of only really been a thing for about a year or so. Which is why, you know, Sony made a PS4 Pro and we got an Xbox One X to kind of cater for these new screens. The Switch came out, you know, the year after that, in 2017, and they still weren't massively common or super cheap. Now they are, and they've kind of become the default almost now, even though, you know, we don't really have any TV channels that that broadcast in 4K natively that aren't premium. Even there's not very many premium ones. It's really people that watch, you know, 4K Blu-rays like me that have a use. So, like, you know, the streaming services like Disney Plus and YouTube, and they have 4K. That's really where people are getting their 4K stuff for the most part, I think. Certainly in the mainstream. But, yeah, the Switch 2 definitely needs to cater to those displays now. And, the Switch just couldn't do anything, you know, definitely could not output anything at 4K. You know, it couldn't really do 1080p. Without some, you know, artifacting and major upscaling going on. So, but if it can do that and maybe use frame generation to, you know, smooth out some of those games where on the original Switch the frame rate was a bit sketchy, I'm all for it. And if it can make something look decent, look like a fairly decent 4K image, and if it's upscaling it from a lower resolution, well, it will be upscaling it from a lower resolution, and to the point where it nearly looks like a native 4K image, that'd be pretty good for what is basically a handheld. And we know that, you know, when it goes into the dock, the original Switch, it kind of has more power being chucked into it. So the clocks can increase, the CPU and the GPU clocks and the RAM, or they all get jacked up. And that's why, you know, we can output games at higher resolution. There'll be more of that, I think, with the Switch 2, but with the addition of, you know, a bit of frame gen, some AI upscaling, and we can get things looking really nice on a 4K TV. But on the handheld itself, I think keep the 720p screen. They look great. Means you'll be able to get good performance as well. You're not trying to push, you know, loads more pixels. Some of those PC handhelds have really absurdly high resolution screens that don't really work in gaming because the Legion Go has got like a 2560 by 1440 it might be. Actually, it might just be a 1440p screen. I think it might be a 16 by 10 variant of 1440, but you're not really going to run games, so you're not modern AAA games at that resolution. So it's kind of redundant, really. 720p is perfect. It's 1080p is pretty good, actually. 1080p is about the most you want at the moment in a handheld screen. And obviously, you know, you save battery as well, you know, so Nintendo are all about battery life. And you think there would be a minimum is a couple of hours. I think when the original Switch came out, and I think they were kind of saying it was sort of 2.5 to 3 hours, maybe more sometimes. I think there was a bit of backlash from that. People were like, wow, that's pathetic.
Yeah.
You know,
my Game Boy was 18 hours on 4 batteries, but, you know.
But even like the PSP and like the DS were like, you know, 7, 8, 9 hours, weren't they? So it was a bit of a... But that's kind of the norm now. All of these gaming PC handhelds, which obviously didn't exist when the Switch was around, they're all kind of, you know, you're looking at probably 2 hours unless you're running Vampire Survivors. And then you'll get a few more. But, I think it probably 2-hour battery life and similar form factor, just a bit more ergonomic. Keep the cartridges, because they've obviously been great, although a mixture of downloads and cartridges is kind of what we've ended up with the Switch, which is okay, which is fine.
It's got to have more storage.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was pathetic, wasn't it? Even
32 gigabytes, isn't it now? It's a bit ridiculous. But
they probably won't go all out, though. They never really do they? I think you're probably going to get 256 gig, which is not great.
it'll be something like that, and then they're obviously sell branded SD cards, but
well, I guess there wasn't really. I don't think people were too up in arms, were they, with the original Switch, because it was just SD cards. You could just buy an SD card and bang, you've got. They didn't try and make any stupid customized, like the PS Vita cards, which are absurd, having its own storage, that you couldn't use anywhere else. So, I mean, you probably get 256 gig, which would be okay for a few games. I mean, they're not going to be as big as PS5 games. You wouldn't think they would be anyway. And then you can just get your SD cards, which is fine, I think. That's kind of, I think, where we're going to be. Have you got any other? I mean, price? You mentioned 299. I think it might be more like 400 with inflation.
I think you've got a point, and I mean, I've always been. It sounds terrible, but if people want good technology and all the latest bits and bells and whistles, then unfortunately sometimes you have to pay for it. But I think the sweet spot for getting everyone's on their Christmas list, on their birthday lists is $299, because you've got to think that Nintendo, they're going to make their money now with Nintendo Online. They're going to make their money with selling all their Mario games for £50 a pop, Zelda games at that price that never seem to drop down. That's where they're going to make their money. And,
exactly, yeah.
And they've got to put on the gamble that, well, actually, the Switch 2 is going to be here for another 7-8 years, if not longer. So then, the cost of the hardware will come down and down and down, and then they'll make their money sort of towards sort of the back end of it. But that'd be my sort of feeling really about it.
Yeah, I think $299 would be ideal. I think it's probably going to be closer to $4, maybe, because of the what we've seen with the PS5 and the Xbox Series. They've actually gone up in price to a degree, and it's a handheld, so you always pay a little bit of a premium for things being shrunk down like that. They're never going to be quite as cheap as the regular consoles, but I'm hoping 300 a bit would be perfect, and it would sell like mad. But I think you're probably looking at closer to 400, and I think it'll still be pretty decent. Certainly no more than that. They can't do more than that.
Oh no, they can't be.
You'll be alien. Yeah,
you'll be going. I'll get a Switch then, and
we'll go PS5. And not be funny,
exactly.
These PC handhelds that have absolutely flooded the market now since the Steam Deck are Nintendo wouldn't admit this, and probably the guys that make the PC handhelds wouldn't, but they are competition. And you can buy a Steam Deck for £400 cheaper if you get a refurbished one versus a Switch 2. And to be honest, I can't imagine a Switch 2 is going to be that much more of a jump in power over the regular Steam Deck. It might even not be at all. Really, that's gonna eat into the potential. People might just be like, well, I'll just get a Steam Deck then. I'll save myself £100 and do that, and have more games. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, we'll probably be talking about this again. And apparently it's in the next week. We're going to hear the final details.
Oh really? Oh wow.
That's what Eurogamer have been saying today. So
well, we'll wait. We'll wait and see.
Anyway, Stu, so to finish it all off, where can you find us on the interwebs?
Oh, we're everywhere. So search Console Shock on YouTube, search it on any of your podcast clients, search it on Twitter or X, search it on Facebook, and you'll find Console Shock.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for listening, and we hope to catch you in the next one. Take care.
Take it easy, guys. Bye-bye.